Dolphin leads swimmer to deep waters. What they find will leave you speechless. It was a crisp, clear morning when Ava decided to take her first swim in the open ocean since moving to the sleepy coastal town. The water stretched endlessly before her, shimmering like liquid glass under the rising sun. Ava adjusted her goggles, the salty breeze brushing against her face as she waded into the waves. Swimming had always been her refuge, her way of silencing the noise in her head. Since she was a child, the ocean had felt like a second home, a vast, living thing that embraced her fully whenever she dove beneath its surface. But today there was something different in the air. An unshakable feeling that this swim would be unlike any other. As Ava swam farther from shore, her strokes rhythmic and deliberate, a movement caught her eye. Just a few yards away, a sleek, silver-gray figure broke through the water's surface. Her heart skipped a beat. A dolphin. It wasn't unusual to see dolphins near the coast, but this one seemed different. It swam parallel to her, matching her pace as though escorting her through the water. Ava slowed her strokes, floating on her back as the dolphin swam in closer. Its intelligent eyes met hers, and for a moment, it felt as if the creature was trying to tell her something. "Hello there," Ava murmured, her voice carried away by the wind. The dolphin clicked and squeaked, a sound that sent a thrill through her. She couldn't help but laugh, feeling an unexpected sense of connection with the wild creature. The dolphin didn't leave her side as she swam, circling her in slow, deliberate motions. At first, Ava thought it might be curiosity, but as the minutes passed, she noticed a pattern to its movements. The dolphin wasn't aimless, it was trying to guide her. It would dart ahead, pause, then turn back as if beckoning her to follow. Curiosity tugged at Ava. She had read stories about dolphins leading humans to safety or helping them in times of danger. But this was different. The dolphin wasn't guiding her away from something, it was leading her towards something. Against her better judgment, Ava decided to follow. "What are you trying to show me?" she asked aloud, her voice tinged with both excitement and apprehension. The dolphin responded with a high-pitched squeal, diving beneath the surface before reappearing farther ahead. The water grew deeper as Ava followed the dolphin, the shore becoming a distant line on the horizon. She knew she should be cautious. She was venturing into unfamiliar territory without any safety precautions. But something about the dolphin's persistence made her feel strangely safe, as though it wouldn't let anything happen to her. After what felt like an eternity, the dolphin stopped abruptly, floating just ahead of her. Ava treaded water, her breath quickening as she noticed a dark shape beneath the surface. It was massive, looming like a shadow in the depths. Her heart raced as the dolphin swam down toward the shape, clicking and squeaking as if calling her to join. Ava hesitated, her instincts screaming at her to return to the safety of the shore. But the dolphin's movements were so deliberate, so filled with purpose, that she couldn't ignore the pull of her curiosity. Taking a deep breath, she adjusted her goggles and dove beneath the surface. The world below was both beautiful and haunting. Shafts of sunlight pierced through the water, illuminating the dark shape that had caught her attention. As Ava swam closer, she realized it was a structure, a sunken vessel, its rusted hull covered in coral and seaweed. Her pulse quickened as she recognized what it was, a shipwreck. The dolphin swam around the wreckage, its sleek body cutting through the water with ease. Ava followed cautiously, her movements slower as she took in the sight. The ship was enormous, its once proud frame now lying quietly on the ocean floor. Schools of fish darted through its windows and strange, colorful sea creatures clung to its surfaces. The dolphin paused near what looked like an opening in the hull, turning to face Ava. Its eyes seemed to hold an urgency that sent a chill down her spine. "You really want me to go in there, don't you?" she muttered, bubbles escaping her lips as she exhaled. Gathering her courage, Ava swam toward the opening, peering inside. The light from above barely penetrated the interior, leaving much of it cloaked in shadow. She hesitated again, her instincts battling with her growing sense of wonder. Then, with a deep breath, she pushed herself forward, entering the shipwreck. Inside, the wreckage was eerily quiet, save for the occasional creak of the ship as it shifted in the water. Ava's movements disturbed small clouds of silt that floated lazily around her. The dolphin stayed close, its presence oddly comforting in the dark, confined space. She swam through what must have once been the ship's main deck, her fingers brushing against the rusted walls. The remnants of the ship's past lay scattered around her. A broken compass, a cracked porthole, the skeletal remains of a wooden chair. But it wasn't until she turned a corner that she saw it, a large chest partially buried beneath debris. Her breath caught as she swam closer, her hands trembling as she reached out to touch the aged wood. The chest was locked, its rusted latch barely holding it closed. The Dolphin swam beside her, clicking softly as if urging her forward. Ava hesitated, her heart pounding. She had no idea what might be inside, or if opening it would even be possible. But something told her that this was what the Dolphin had brought her to see. Ava stared at the chest, her heart racing. The water around her felt colder now, as if the weight of the ocean was pressing down harder the closer she got to it. The Dolphin swam in tight circles nearby, its clicks and squeaks urging her on. Gripping the edges of the chest, she tried to pull it free from the debris, her muscles straining against the resistance. After a few tense moments, the chest shifted, sending a small cloud of silt into the water. Ava tugged again, finally managing to dislodge it from the wreckage. The chest was heavier than she anticipated, its weight adding to the strain on her already burning arms. She carefully swam back through the narrow corridors of the ship, keeping the chest close. The Dolphin darted ahead of her, guiding her toward the exit. By the time she emerged into the open water, her lungs were screaming for air. She kicked hard, ascending to the surface in a rush. Breaking through the waves, Ava gasped for breath, clutching the chest tightly as it floated beside her. The Dolphin surfaced a moment later, letting out a series of triumphant squeals. Ava couldn't help but laugh, the adrenaline coursing through her veins making her feel both exhilarated and terrified. "What is this?" she asked aloud, her voice breathless. The chest looked ancient, its wood darkened by time and water, the metal bands holding it together encrusted with rust and barnacles. The lock was still intact, though it seemed fragile, as if a strong enough pull might snap it open. Ava secured the chest to her buoyancy belt and began swimming back toward shore, the Dolphin still by her side. The journey felt longer this time, the weight of the chest slowing her progress. By the time she reached the beach, the sun was beginning to dip lower in the sky, casting a golden glow over the water. Dragging the chest onto the sand, Ava collapsed beside it, her chest heaving as she caught her breath. The Dolphin lingered just offshore, its dorsal fin cutting through the water like a sentinel. "I don't know what's in here," she said, looking toward the Dolphin. "But I guess I owe it to you to find out." The chest was locked, but the wood around the latch was soft and splintered. Ava searched the beach until she found a rock, then used it to hammer at the lock. After a few strikes, the rusted metal gave way, and the lid creaked open. Inside, she found layers of fabric, their colors faded but still vibrant in places. Beneath the fabric were objects that made her breath catch, a collection of jewelry, ornate and glittering even after years in the water. Rings, necklaces and brooches lay tangled together, their designs intricate and clearly from another era. But it was the final item in the chest that sent a shiver down Ava's spine. Carefully, she pulled out a leather-bound book, its cover embossed with gold lettering. The writing was too faded to read, but as she opened the book, she realized it was a journal. The pages were delicate, water-stained but legible in places. The handwriting was elegant, looping across the pages with notes, sketches and what appeared to be maps. Ava's fingers trembled as she flipped through the entries, each one detailing the life of a ship's captain. The journal chronicled voyages across vast oceans, encounters with exotic lands and trade deals struck in bustling ports. But the entries became darker as she read on. The captain wrote of storms that battered the ship, supplies running low and tensions rising among the crew. The final entry sent a chill through Ava. "The sea has taken its toll. I fear this will be our last voyage. If anyone finds this, know that these treasures are all that remain of what we once were. May they bring hope to those who discover them." Ava sat back, her mind racing. The chest wasn't just a collection of valuables, it was a piece of history, a snapshot of a life lost to the ocean's depths. The Dolphin's role in leading her here felt almost too incredible to believe. The next day, Ava contacted a local marine historian, a man named Dr. James Porter, who had dedicated his life to uncovering maritime mysteries. When Ava showed him the contents of the chest, his eyes widened with awe. "This is extraordinary," Dr. Porter said, examining the journal. "The craftsmanship of the jewelry, the details in these maps, it all points to a mid-19th century trading vessel. Shipwrecks like this are rare, especially ones with personal artifacts intact." As they spoke, the Dolphin appeared again, swimming close to shore. Ava couldn't shake the feeling that it was watching over her, ensuring the chest was handled with care. Dr. Porter agreed to help Ava preserve the artifacts, promising to document the chest's contents and trace the ship's origins. Together, they planned to share the story with the world, honoring the lives lost and the history hidden beneath the waves. But as the weeks passed, Ava began to feel a deeper connection to the ocean. She returned to the beach every day, hoping to see the Dolphin that had started it all. It appeared sporadically, always keeping its distance but never truly leaving. Ava couldn't explain it, but she felt as if the dolphin was more than just an animal, it was a guide, a protector. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Ava stood on the shore, the gentle waves lapping at her feet. The chest and its treasures had been sent to a museum, but her thoughts lingered on the captain's journal and the life it captured. The dolphin surfaced nearby, its sleek body catching the last rays of sunlight. Ava smiled, wading into the water to meet it. "Thank you," she said softly. "For everything." The dolphin let out a series of clicks, its eyes meeting hers one last time before it disappeared beneath the waves, leaving Ava with a sense of wonder and gratitude she knew she would carry forever. The museum exhibit featuring the chest and its contents quickly became a sensation. People from all over the region flocked to see the treasures recovered from the depths. The intricate jewelry, the faded journal, and the detailed maps sparked curiosity and awe. Dr. Porter meticulously cataloged each item, presenting them with context about maritime history and the perils of 19th-century sea voyages. For Ava, seeing the exhibit come together was both fulfilling and surreal. She stood in the museum's grand hall during the opening night, watching as people admired the artifacts. Yet even in the midst of the crowd, her thoughts drifted back to the dolphin. Its persistence and purpose had led her to this incredible discovery, but Ava couldn't shake the feeling that their connection wasn't yet complete. The dolphin had guided her to the chest, but why? Was there more it wanted her to find? After the exhibit's success, Ava found herself drawn back to the ocean. Each morning, she would swim along the same route where she had first encountered the dolphin, scanning the water for any sign of it. Weeks passed with no sightings, and Ava began to wonder if she would ever see it again. Then, one crisp morning, as the first light of dawn painted the horizon, a familiar shape broke the surface of the water. The dolphin. Ava's heart soared as it approached, clicking and squeaking in what felt like excitement. Without hesitation, she waded into the waves, swimming out to meet it. The dolphin circled her, its movements deliberate and familiar, as though picking up where they had left off. "You're back," Ava said softly, her voice tinged with relief. "What is it this time?" The dolphin darted ahead, stopping to wait for her before continuing toward deeper waters. Ava followed, the same mix of curiosity and apprehension coursing through her veins. The open ocean stretched endlessly around her, and the dolphin seemed to be leading her farther than ever before. The water grew darker as they swam, the sunlight struggling to penetrate the depths. Ava's stroke slowed as unease crept in. She glanced back toward the shore, now barely a thin line on the horizon. "How far are we going?" she murmured, her voice swallowed by the vastness of the sea. The dolphin paused ahead of her, its sleek body motionless for a moment. Then it dove beneath the surface, its tail flicking in a way that felt almost impatient. Ava hesitated, her lungs tightening as the enormity of the ocean pressed down on her. With a deep breath, she adjusted her goggles and followed. This time, the world beneath the waves was even more breathtaking, and more ominous. The dolphin led her to a canyon-like expanse on the ocean floor, where jagged rocks and coral formations created a labyrinth of shadows. Ava's pulse quickened as she swam closer, her eyes darting between the shifting beams of light and the dark crevices below. The dolphin stopped near a cluster of rocks, clicking loudly as if trying to draw her attention. Ava swam closer, her hands brushing against the rough surface of the coral. At first, she saw nothing but the vibrant marine life darting between the rocks. Then her fingers grazed something cold and metallic. It was an anchor, small and ornate, its design far too intricate for a standard ship. Ava tugged at it, dislodging it from the coral. As she lifted it, she noticed an engraving along its base. "For every voyage, a safe return." Ava surfaced, gasping for air as she clutched the anchor. The dolphin surfaced beside her, letting out a series of soft clicks. "You wanted me to find this, didn't you?" Ava asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The dolphin bobbed its head, its eyes reflecting the sunlight in a way that felt almost knowing. Back on the shore, Ava examined the anchor more closely. It was unlike anything she had seen before, its craftsmanship delicate yet purposeful. She called Dr. Porter, who arrived within the hour, his excitement palpable as he inspected the artifact. "This is remarkable," he said, running his fingers over the engraving. "It's clearly from the same era as the chest, possibly even from the same ship. But this phrase, 'for every voyage a safe return,' it's almost poetic." Ava nodded. "It feels personal, like it was made for someone specific." Dr. Porter's expression turned thoughtful. "If it was part of the ship, it might be mentioned in the journal. Let's check." Back at the museum, they carefully opened the captain's journal, scanning its pages for any mention of the anchor. Near the end of the journal, in an entry dated just days before the shipwreck, they found it. Commissioned a special anchor for the crew's morale. A symbol of hope for safe journeys, no matter how treacherous the waters. May it guide us home even if we are lost to the sea. Ava's breath caught. The anchor wasn't just a piece of equipment, it was a symbol of the captain's hope and resilience in the face of unimaginable danger. Holding it in her hands, she felt a profound connection to the lives lost on that fateful voyage. But Ava couldn't shake the feeling that there was still more to uncover. The Dolphin's behavior, the artifacts it led her to, everything felt deliberate, as though the ocean itself was trying to tell her something. What if the anchor isn't the last piece? She asked Dr. Porter. What if there's more out there? Dr. Porter smiled, his eyes glinting with intrigue. There's only one way to find out. Ava returned to the ocean the next morning, her heart pounding as she swam out to meet the dolphin once more. The creature greeted her with an excited series of clicks, as though it had been waiting for her. Together, they ventured into the deep once again, the mysteries of the sea pulling Ava toward answers she couldn't yet imagine. The next swim felt different, heavier, more purposeful. Ava followed the dolphin through the now familiar waters, her strokes steady as her thoughts raced. The anchor's discovery had opened a new chapter in this unfolding mystery, but it also deepened her sense of responsibility. The dolphin wasn't leading her to these artifacts by chance. She felt as though she was being trusted with a story that had waited decades to be told. The dolphin paused near a drop-off in the ocean floor, the water around them dark and still. Ava adjusted her goggles, peering into the abyss below. The dolphin clicked softly, circling her before diving into the depths. She hesitated, her chest tightening as she stared into the inky blackness. Ava took a deep breath, steeling herself before diving after the dolphin. The water pressed around her, cold and relentless, as she followed the flickering shape of her guide. Her ears popped with the increasing pressure, but she pushed forward, driven by equal parts fear and wonder. The dolphin stopped near an outcropping of rock that jutted from the seafloor like a jagged monument. Ava squinted through the dim light, her eyes catching the faint outline of something lodged between the rocks. She swam closer, her fingers brushing against the rough surface as she reached for the object. It was a small box, its surface weathered and encrusted with marine life. Ava carefully pried it free, her lungs screaming for air as she turned and kicked hard toward the surface. The dolphin followed, circling her protectively as she broke through the waves, gasping for breath. Back on the shore, Ava examined the box, her hands trembling with anticipation. It was locked, but the wood around the latch was fragile, and a few well-placed strikes with a rock were enough to open it. Inside, she found a delicate locket, its chain tarnished but intact. She held it up to the light, her breath catching as she saw the initials engraved on its surface. E.W. Dr. Porter arrived shortly after, his face lighting up as Ava showed him the locket. This must have belonged to someone on the ship, he said, carefully turning it over in his hands. The initials, they could be the captain's or perhaps a family member's. Ava nodded, her mind spinning with possibilities. Do you think the journal mentions it? Dr. Porter retrieved the journal from his bag, flipping through its pages with practiced precision. About halfway through, he stopped, his finger resting on a passage that seemed to leap off the page. To my dearest Elizabeth, this locket carries my heart even when I am far from you. May it remind you of the love that endures beyond storms, beyond oceans, beyond time. Ava's throat tightened as she read the words. The locket wasn't just a piece of jewelry, it was a symbol of a love that had endured through unimaginable hardship. She held it delicately, her mind filled with images of the captain and Elizabeth, their lives intertwined by the sea and separated by its unforgiving depths. The discovery of the locket reignited the public's fascination with the shipwreck. The museum added it to the exhibit, pairing it with the journal entry to tell the story of the captain's devotion to Elizabeth. Visitors flocked to see it, many moved to tears by the tale of love and loss. For Ava, the locket felt deeply personal. She began to think of the dolphin as more than just a guide. It was a bridge between the past and present, connecting her to a story that needed to be remembered. Each time she returned to the ocean, she felt a sense of reverence, as though stepping into a sacred space. One morning, as Ava swam out to meet the dolphin, she noticed it behaving differently. It swam in tight circles, clicking urgently as if trying to communicate something. Ava followed as it led her farther from shore, her nerves tingling with anticipation. The dolphin brought her to another shipwreck, smaller than the first but just as haunting. Ava hesitated as she approached the rusted hull, the water around her growing colder. The Dolphin swam beside her, nudging her gently forward. Inside the wreckage, Ava discovered a crate filled with personal belongings, letters, photographs, and small trinkets. The items were water-damaged but still intact enough to offer a glimpse into the lives of the crew and passengers. One photograph caught her eye, a young woman standing on a pier, her arms wrapped around a man in a captain's uniform. On the back, a faded inscription read, "Elizabeth and William, 1864. Ava's breath caught. The captain had a name. And now, so did the woman who had held his heart. Dr. Porter was ecstatic when Ava brought the crate to the museum. "This photograph is extraordinary," he said, holding it up carefully. "It gives us a face, a connection to the people who lived this story. This changes everything." The photograph became the centerpiece of the exhibit, drawing even larger crowds to the museum. Visitors marveled at the artifacts, many leaving with a renewed appreciation for the resilience and love that defined the human spirit. But for Ava, the journey wasn't over. The Dolphin continued to appear, leading her to new discoveries that filled in the gaps of the story. Each artifact, each clue brought her closer to understanding the lives that had been lost to the sea, and the enduring connections that transcended time. One evening, as Ava stood on the shore watching the sun dip below the horizon, the Dolphin appeared again. It swam close to the beach, clicking softly as if bidding her farewell. Ava waded into the water, her heart swelling with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice catching in her throat. "For trusting me. For guiding me." The Dolphin lingered for a moment, its eyes meeting hers with a depth that felt almost human. Then, with a graceful flick of its tail, it disappeared into the waves, leaving Ava with a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. Days turned into weeks and the Dolphin didn't return. Ava found herself standing on the shore each morning, scanning the horizon, longing to see the familiar sleek shape break through the water. But the ocean remained calm, its surface unbroken. Despite the Dolphin's absence, Ava felt its presence in every step of her journey. The discoveries they had made together, the chest, the anchor, the locket, and the crate, had formed a tapestry of a life that had once thrived in the face of the sea's harshness. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling that there was still one final piece missing, one last chapter to uncover. One afternoon, while reviewing the artifacts with Dr. Porter at the museum, Ava noticed something unusual in the journal. Near the back, beneath the final entries, was a faint watermark, an impression that seemed out of place. She tilted the page under the light, revealing what appeared to be a hidden map. The outline was faint but unmistakable, showing a series of coordinates overlaid with a sketch of the ocean floor. "This wasn't visible before," Ava said, her voice tinged with excitement. "It must have been imprinted by something in the crate." Dr. Porter leaned closer, his eyes narrowing. "These coordinates, they're nearby, just a few miles off the coast. This could lead to something significant, maybe the ship's final resting place." Ava's heart pounded. She knew she had to return to the water. Early the next morning, Ava set out with Dr. Porter on a small research vessel. The coordinates on the map guided them to an area where the ocean floor dropped sharply, a place known locally as the Abyssal Shelf. As they neared the site, the water turned an inky blue, its depth impossible to fathom. Equipped with a diving suit and oxygen tanks, Ava prepared to descend. Dr. Porter, though supportive, opted to remain on the boat, monitoring her progress through the camera attached to her gear. "Be careful," he warned. "The shelf is unpredictable, currents can shift quickly." Ava nodded, her resolve unwavering. She felt the pull of the mystery, the story she was determined to complete. The descent was slow and deliberate. The water grew colder and darker the farther Ava went, the light from the surface fading into nothingness. Her flashlight illuminated small sections of the ocean floor, revealing jagged rocks and clusters of coral. She followed the map's coordinates, her breathing steady as she scanned the area for anything unusual. Finally, her light caught something glinting in the distance. She swam closer, her heart racing as the shape of another shipwreck came into view. This one was larger than the others, its hull mostly intact despite the decades it had spent beneath the waves. As she approached, she noticed something peculiar, a large bell hanging near the ship's bow, its surface etched with ornate designs. She reached out to touch it, her fingers brushing against the metal. The bell bore an inscription, "Elizabeth's Voyage." Tears welled in Ava's eyes as the significance of the name hit her. This was the captain's ship, the vessel that had carried his love, his crew, and his hope through treacherous waters. And now, after all these years, it has been found. She carefully explored the wreck, her flashlight revealing more artifacts scattered across the floor. Among them was a leather satchel, its straps frayed but intact. Ava opened it, her breath catching as she saw its contents. Letters wrapped in a faded ribbon, their paper brittle but legible. The letters were addressed to Elizabeth, each one signed with a flourish. "Forever yours, William." Ava's hands trembled as she read the first few lines, the words filled with longing and devotion. She realized that the captain had written these letters during his final voyage, hoping they would one day reach the woman he loved. Back on the boat, Dr. Porter helped Ava carefully preserve the letters, his face alight with wonder. "This is the heart of the story," he said. "The captain's love for Elizabeth, the life he tried to build despite the odds. It's all here." The letters became the final piece of the exhibit, drawing unprecedented attention from historians, romantics, and curious visitors alike. The museum created a special display for them, pairing the letters with the locket and the journal. Together, they painted a vivid picture of a man who had loved deeply, a woman who had waited endlessly, and a bond that had transcended the boundaries of life and death. For Ava, the journey had been transformative. She stood in the museum's gallery one evening, staring at the completed exhibit as a wave of gratitude washed over her. The Dolphin had led her to these discoveries, trusting her to bring this story to light. And in doing so, it had changed her life. Later that night, Ava returned to the beach, the cool sand pressing against her feet as she stood at the water's edge. The waves lapped gently, and for the first time in weeks, she felt a sense of closure. But just as she turned to leave, a familiar shape appeared in the distance. The Dolphin. Ava waded into the water, tears streaming down her face as the Dolphin approached. "You came back," she whispered, her voice breaking. The Dolphin swam close, clicking softly as it circled her. "Thank you," Ava said, reaching out to touch its smooth skin. "For everything." The Dolphin lingered for a moment, its eyes meeting hers with an intensity that felt almost human. Then, with a final, graceful dive, it disappeared beneath the waves, leaving Ava with a heart full of wonder and a life forever changed. The weeks following the Dolphin's final visit felt like the quiet aftermath of a great adventure. Ava found herself reflecting not only on the discoveries she had made but on the transformation she had undergone. The ocean had always been a place of solace for her, but now it felt like a part of her, an entity that had shared its secrets and trusted her to carry its stories forward. The exhibit at the museum became a centerpiece of cultural history. Visitors marveled at the artifacts, from the chest and locket to the anchor and the letters. The story of Captain William and Elizabeth, told through their belongings and the journal entries, captured hearts and imaginations. Schoolchildren listened with wide eyes as docents recounted the journey of discovery, and couples often lingered at the locket display, their fingers intertwined as they read the inscription, "Forever, beyond storms and oceans." Dr. Porter invited Ava to speak at the exhibit's closing ceremony, honoring her role in bringing the story to light. Standing in front of a packed audience, Ava felt a mix of nerves and gratitude. She took a deep breath and began. "When I first swam out into the ocean that morning, I had no idea how much my life was about to change. I thought I was just following a dolphin. But what I found was so much more, a story that had been waiting to be told, a legacy hidden beneath the waves." Her voice trembled slightly as she continued, her emotions raw but steady. The captain and Elizabeth didn't know their story would inspire people generations later. They were just living their lives, loving each other, and doing their best in a world filled with challenges. And yet, their love endured. It transcended time, carried by the ocean until it found its way to us. She paused, glancing at the exhibit. "I think that's the lesson here. Love, loyalty, and hope, they leave ripples just like the waves on the water. And sometimes, those ripples reach farther than we could ever imagine." The room erupted into applause, but Ava's thoughts were with the Dolphin, the silent guide who had led her to this moment. She smiled, silently thanking the creature for the gift it had given her. Life continued, but the ocean called to Ava in new ways. She began volunteering with marine conservation groups, dedicating her time to protecting the waters that had given her so much. She shared her story with anyone who would listen, encouraging others to see the ocean not just as a resource but as a living, breathing entity filled with history, mystery, and magic. One sunny afternoon, as she walked along the beach collecting litter, Ava spotted something in the distance. A sleek, silver-gray shape cutting through the waves. Her heart leapt as she recognized the Dolphin, its familiar clicks reaching her ears like a melody. She waded into the water, her pulse quickening with joy. The Dolphin swam close, its movements playful yet deliberate. Ava laughed, tears streaming down her face. "You're back," she said softly. "I missed you." The Dolphin circled her, clicking and squealing as if to say it had missed her too. For a moment they stayed like that, woman and Dolphin, united by an unspoken bond. Then, with a final leap into the air, the Dolphin vanished beneath the waves, leaving Ava with a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. As the sun dipped below the horizon that evening, Ava stood at the water's edge, the waves lapping gently at her feet. She thought of Captain William and Elizabeth, of the lives their story had touched, and of the Dolphin who had made it all possible. She smiled, her heart full of gratitude. The ocean, vast and unknowable, had given her a gift, a story of love and resilience that would ripple through time, carried by those who believed in the enduring power of connection. And as the first stars appeared in the sky, Ava turned toward home, knowing that her journey with the sea, and the stories it held, was far from over. Days after the Dolphin's unexpected return, Ava found herself haunted by a restless feeling. The Dolphin's reappearance had been joyful, but there was an urgency to its behavior that she couldn't shake. It wasn't just a reunion, it was as if the creature had something more to share, something she hadn't yet uncovered. One evening, as she stood at the edge of the water watching the waves roll in, she noticed the Dolphin again, closer than ever before. Its clicks were insistent, almost pleading. Without hesitation, Ava grabbed her wetsuit and gear, her heart pounding as she waded into the surf. The Dolphin led her farther than it ever had, out to the edge of the abyssal shelf where the ocean plunged into shadow. The water felt heavier here, the currents stronger and more unpredictable. Ava hesitated, her instincts warning her of the dangers below. But the Dolphin's presence steadied her. She took a deep breath, adjusted her gear and dove into the depths. As she descended, the world around her grew darker, the sunlight fading into eerie blue shadows. The Dolphin swam ahead, pausing frequently to ensure she was following. Her flashlight beam cut through the gloom, revealing a seafloor littered with jagged rocks and tangled seaweed. Then she saw it. The wreck of another ship loomed before her, its silhouette ghostly in the dim light. This vessel was larger than the others, its hull twisted and broken but still bearing traces of grandeur. Ava's breath quickened as she swam closer, the Dolphin circling her protectively. The ship seemed different, more than just a casualty of the sea. Its sides were covered in strange markings, intricate carvings that shimmered faintly as her light passed over them. Ava reached out to touch the carvings, her fingers brushing against the cold, barnacle-covered surface. The designs felt deliberate, almost like a message left behind. As she explored further, Ava noticed an opening in the hull, wide enough for her to enter. The Dolphin clicked loudly, its movements agitated. "You want me to go in there, don't you?" she murmured, her voice muffled by her breathing apparatus. The Dolphin nudged her gently, its gaze unwavering. Ava swallowed hard, her pulse racing as she swam into the ship. Inside, the wreck was both haunting and mesmerizing. Broken beams and rusted machinery littered the floor, but there was a strange stillness to the space, as if time itself had paused. Ava's flashlight illuminated faded paintings on the walls, depicting scenes of sailing ships and distant lands. In the center of the room, partially buried beneath debris, was a large chest. Unlike the previous one, this chest was ornately carved, its surface covered in swirling patterns that matched the markings on the ship's hull. Ava's hands trembled as she reached for it, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and excitement. The chest was heavy, its wood swollen and cracked from years underwater. She tugged at it, the effort exhausting her. The Dolphin swam closer, clicking softly as if encouraging her. With a final, desperate pull, the chest came free, sending a cloud of silt into the water. Ava swam toward the surface, the chest clutched tightly in her arms. Her lungs burned as she ascended, the weight of the chest dragging her down. Just as she thought she might not make it, the Dolphin appeared beside her, pressing against her side as if to help her rise. When she broke through the waves, she gasped for air, clinging to the chest as the Dolphin bobbed beside her. Exhausted but exhilarated, she swam back to shore, dragging the chest onto the sand with trembling hands. Back at her small cottage, Ava carefully opened the chest, her hands still shaking. Inside, she found a collection of artifacts unlike anything she had seen before. There were tools, maps and journals, but what caught her eye was a large, intricately carved compass. Its design was unlike any she had encountered, the needle still faintly glowing as it pointed north. At the bottom of the chest was a letter, sealed in wax and surprisingly well preserved. Ava broke the seal, unfolding the delicate paper. The letter, written in elegant script, began with the words, "To those who find this, you have discovered the legacy of the Voyager. This ship carried dreams of exploration, of hope, and of love. Though the sea claimed us, our story lives on. Share it so that we may never be forgotten." The weight of the discovery left Ava breathless. The Voyager wasn't just another shipwreck, it was a vessel of dreams, a symbol of humanity's desire to explore and connect. She felt an overwhelming sense of purpose, knowing she had been chosen to carry this story forward. The next morning, Ava returned to the museum with the chest. Dr. Porter's reaction was immediate and profound. "This is beyond extraordinary," he said, his voice trembling. "The Voyager has been the subject of legends for years, but no one believed it could still exist. You've uncovered something truly monumental." The museum prepared a new exhibit, centered around Voyager and its treasures. The compass, the letter, and the artifacts became symbols of resilience and wonder, drawing visitors from around the world. On the day of the exhibit's opening, Ava stood before the crowd, her heart full as she shared her journey. "This discovery isn't just about the artifacts," she said. "It's about the people who lived these stories, who braved the unknown and left pieces of themselves behind. And it's about the connections we can still make, even across time and loss." The crowd erupted in applause, but Ava's thoughts drifted to the Dolphin, the guide who had led her to this moment. That night, as she walked along the beach, she saw it again, its sleek body illuminated by the moonlight. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice carried away by the wind. The Dolphin clicked softly, its movements slow and deliberate. Then with one final dive, it disappeared into the waves. Ava watched the horizon, tears streaming down her face. The Dolphin had given her more than just a story, it had given her a purpose, a connection to something greater than herself. And though it was gone, she knew its presence would stay with her, woven into the fabric of her life. The days following the opening of the Voyager exhibit were a whirlwind of emotion for Ava. The museum was flooded with visitors, each captivated by the story of the ship and the artifacts she had uncovered. Reporters clamored for interviews, and marine historians hailed her as a pioneer of underwater exploration. Yet, despite the acclaim, Ava's thoughts remained anchored to the Dolphin that had guided her through it all. One evening, as she walked along the shoreline, her mind replayed every moment of her journey. The chest, the anchor, the locket, the letters, each discovery felt like a piece of a puzzle she hadn't realized she was solving. And at the center of it all was the Dolphin, an enigma she could never fully understand but would always treasure. The waves lapped gently at her feet, the horizon bathed in the soft glow of twilight. She closed her eyes, letting the rhythmic sound of the ocean fill her senses. For the first time, she felt a profound sense of peace, as though the story she had uncovered was finally complete. But the ocean wasn't done with her yet. As she turned to head back to her cottage, a sharp cry echoed across the water. She froze, her heart pounding as the sound repeated, a series of clicks and whistles she knew all too well. Spinning around, she scanned the waves, her pulse quickening. There, in the distance, was the Dolphin. But it wasn't alone. Ava gasped as she saw a second Dolphin swimming beside it, smaller and more tentative in its movements. The pair swam toward her, their sleek bodies gliding effortlessly through the water. When they reached the shallows, the smaller Dolphin hesitated, its movements uncertain. The larger Dolphin clicked encouragingly, nudging the younger one forward. Tears welled in Ava's eyes as she knelt in the surf, her hands trembling. "You brought someone with you," she murmured, her voice breaking. "Why?" The larger Dolphin swam in a tight circle, its clicks growing louder and more insistent. It dove beneath the surface, reappearing moments later with something clasped in its jaws. Ava waded farther into the water, her curiosity battling with her awe. The Dolphin dropped the object near her feet, a piece of weathered driftwood, its surface smooth from years in the sea. Ava picked it up, her fingers tracing the faint carvings along its length. It was a name etched in shaky but deliberate letters, Voyager. Her breath caught as the realization hit her. The Dolphins hadn't just guided her to the wreckage, they had been part of the story all along. Perhaps their ancestors had followed the ship, swimming alongside its doomed journey. Or perhaps they had witnessed its final moments, carrying the memory through generations. She looked at the Dolphins, her tears spilling over. "You've been protecting this story," she said softly. "You've been waiting for someone to understand." The larger Dolphin clicked once more, its movements slow and deliberate. Then with a final leap, it disappeared into the waves, leaving the smaller Dolphin to linger. Ava watched as the young Dolphin swam closer, its curious eyes meeting hers. In that moment, Ava felt an overwhelming sense of connection. The ocean, the Dolphins, the Voyager, it was all part of the same story, one that spanned lifetimes and crossed boundaries she couldn't begin to fathom. The young Dolphin clicked softly, its movements tentative but trusting. Ava reached out, her hand skimming the water as the Dolphin swam past her, its sleek body brushing against her fingers. "You'll carry it forward, won't you?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the sound of the waves. The story. The legacy. The dolphin lingered for a moment longer before diving beneath the surface, its graceful form disappearing into the depths. Ava stood there long after the dolphins had gone, the piece of driftwood clutched in her hands. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting the ocean in hues of gold and violet. She felt the weight of everything she had discovered, the artifacts, the ship, the lives intertwined with the sea. But more than that, she felt the lightness of connection, the unshakable belief that the story of the voyager would continue to inspire those who heard it. As she walked back to her cottage, the driftwood pressed against her chest. Ava knew her journey wasn't truly over. The ocean still held its mysteries, and she was ready to embrace them, guided by the lessons of the past and the enduring bond she had found with the creatures who called it home. That night, as the stars glittered above and the waves whispered against the shore, Ava drifted to sleep with a heart full of gratitude. Somewhere in the vast, unknowable depths of the sea, the dolphins swam on, guardians of a story that would never be forgotten. And in her dreams, Ava saw the voyager, its sails unfurled and its captain standing at the helm, his compass in hand and his heart forever set on home.